So imagine this. You're dead, and you enter this weird place where you have to choose one afterlife to spend the rest of eternity in. Naturally, you wait for your wife of 60 plus years, who indeed joins you soon after.
I have shocking news. You're dead. Yeah, how'd you know?
But then, as it turns out, her first husband, who died in the war, has also been waiting for her, leaving her at an impossible crossroads. This is the premise of eternity, and I know it's a bit of a goofy one because, of course, spending eternity with any one person in any one place feels like an absolute nightmare, and understandably I've seen some people hold that against the movie, especially when taking into account how the rigid rules of this imagined afterlife can feel more like cheap plot contrivances rather than actual world building. And yet I can't help but feel the need to rescue this movie from its detractors, because I think they're also missing the point a bit, as this seemingly nightmarish scenario of choosing one afterlife and one only actually captures something really powerful about what it means to be human. For you see, as we live our lives, we are essentially carving out our place in eternity. When we have agency to choose, picking certain options permanently locks out others. Most often though, choices are made for us, opportunities get taken away, entire life paths become barred, and at some point we have to come to terms with that. And to me, that's what eternity is about. It's not just a romantic comedy that argues for real love instead of fiery passion. No, it's also a deeply sincere rumination about what it means to embrace the life that you've been given. And I thought that was really beautiful. It actually reminded me of It's a Wonderful Life. Not just because it has a similar message, but also because, like that classic movie, it knows that the message itself is, in its essence, kind of a truism, a cliché even. And so instead of merely telling you what you already know, what it does is it offers a creative perspective, a supernatural spin on this dormant everyday truth in order to emotionally reawaken it.
Please! I want to live again!
And this is exactly what Eternity did, and it did it so effectively even that it's now the 12th movie on my list of 11 favorites. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but here's what happened. A few days ago I recorded my big Christmas special believing I had seen every noteworthy 2025 movie that I was going to be able to see. But then, as I was editing, I watched Eternity on a whim and was so unexpectedly moved by it that I just had to include it. And so that's why you're now watching this newly recorded introduction, because cinema is always full of surprises. But of course there's plenty of other movies to talk about, so without further ado, let's cue the actual video. Hey everyone, my name is Tom. Thank you so much for joining me in this end of the year video in which I reflect back on my favorite movies of 2025. I always try to limit myself to 10 favorites, though this year I cheated a little bit and ended up with 11 that I believe you should definitely check out. Along the way, I also have a bunch more honorable mentions, movies such as The Long Walk, which I thought was surprisingly well done based on such a simple premise. Or Steven Soderbergh's Black Bag, which was very stylish and offered a fun spin on the spy genre. And then there's Wake Up Dead Man, the new Knives Out mystery, which I really enjoyed. Joss O'Connor gives a fantastic performance here, the gothic setting was beautifully atmospheric, and I loved the more existential themes that Rian Johnson explored here. 2025 was also the year where we saw a number of movies that tried to capture the growing absurdity of our modern society. Movies like Eddington by Ari Aster, Weapons by Zach Cregger, and Yorgos Lanthimos' Bugonia. I think all three of these are worth watching, as each of them capture in their own way some aspect of the various societal changes we've clearly been suffering from.
Just don't make me think. Post it.
But the, in my opinion, best We Live in a Society movie of 2025, and which also leads me into the first of my favorite movies from this year, is Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice.
한국에선 뭐라는 줄 아세요? 넌 뭐하지야?
After being laid off from his job after 25 years of service, Mansu vows to find another job within 3 months. But when more than a year passes without avail, he becomes desperate and devises a diabolical plan, eliminating his competition.
어쩔 수가 없다.
What I found so fascinating about this movie is that while it may recall the class struggle as seen in, for example, Parasite, no other choice is distinctively not about poverty, nor is it about raging against the machine. If anything, it's the opposite. Mansu enjoyed an upper middle class existence, and the crisis his family now faces has nothing to do with survival, but rather about them having to cancel their Netflix account and cutting back on a few things, and maybe selling the giant fancy house they've been living in. In this sense, Mansu's struggle mainly reveals his own inflexibility and how the attachment to his lifestyle also keeps him utterly enslaved to the same machine that spit him out so indifferently. More than anything, Mansu just wants to get back in, and it's exactly in the lengths that he's clearly willing to go through to reclaim his lost comfort that the true nature of No Other Choices' societal critique emerges. It's an exhilarating dark comedy about the growing power of our capitalist overlords, about dehumanization, and about the amount of evil we're actually willing to live with for the illusion of security. It's also just one of the best directed movies I've seen this year. I would say it has the slickness of David Fincher at his best, but I think that would be underselling the full creative genius that Park Chan-wook displays here, and which by now has firmly established him as a one-of-a-kind filmmaker. I actually have a few more honorable mentions, but I'm going to pair those with the favorites, as I actually found a bunch of thematic connections this year that I think would make for great double features. So for example, take Urchin, which features a young homeless man in search of redemption while struggling with a series of bad choices and bad circumstances. It's a solid debut from filmmaker Harris Dickinson that balances really well the opposing forces of sympathy and judgment for its main character, and it's worth checking out if you get the chance. But there was another 2025 movie about a charismatic troublemaker that I loved even more, and which is the second of my 11 favorites this year, and that's Roofman.
Good morning, team. No, don't be scared. You just do what I say, no one gets hurt, okay?
Roofman tells the bizarre true story about a sympathetic criminal named Jeffrey who broke into a series of McDonald's restaurants and at one point secretly lived inside the walls of a Toys R Us store.
If you can make your brain imagine a better place, it can get you through anything.
Jeffrey is played by Channing Tatum, whose natural charm has you immediately rooting for him. But I liked how his likability is also sort of weaponized against you, as it makes it all too easy to look past the very real harm that's being inflicted by him. And I think this also touches on the main conflict that the movie is exploring, which is the question of how we should judge or not judge the bad actions of an otherwise good man, and somewhat inversely, how some good intentions might actually be masking more selfish concerns. A big chunk of the movie is about how Jeffrey, while running from the police, stumbles into this church group where he falls in love with a woman and starts to build a life with her, which seems to offer a glimpse of who Jeffrey can be, but at the same time there's also an undeniable flaw in the foundation, as he's also lying to her about who he really is. And I think the movie does a great job of navigating this contradiction as a genuine conflict within Jeffrey, and poignantly intersects it with the more matter-of-factly promise of an eventual reckoning, with the reality of a world in which actions, good or bad, have consequences that will eventually come back around, no matter how much you may try to escape them. This year also gave us some unique perspectives on motherhood. Die My Love was an absolutely wild ride, with Jennifer Lawrence firing on all cylinders as this young mother who, after moving out to the countryside, struggles with repressed desires, her relationship, and her identity while slowly slipping away into an all-destructive psychosis. And I think it would make for a great, albeit somewhat exhausting, double feature with the third movie on my list of favorites. If I had legs, I'd kick you.
I can see you now.
Propelled by a fantastic performance from Rose Byrne, If I Had Legs I'd Kick You might just be the ultimate encapsulation of a mother who has to juggle 100 balls at once and who constantly feels like she's 2 seconds away from dropping them all. Her daughter is facing some mysterious illness, her husband is a ship captain who's away for weeks on end, work is a nightmare, and on top of that, she's developing an increasingly hostile relationship with her therapist.
All right.
Okay.
It just captures so well not just the stress of her specific situation, but also the more general idea of feeling so overwhelmed by responsibilities and by things going wrong beyond your control that you can no longer distinguish noise from signal, and that your whole life and every facet within it becomes this perpetual emergency that you just cannot possibly get on top of anymore. Mary Bronstein's direction is especially remarkable here, as she always keeps the camera close on the skin of our exhausted main character, which viscerally emphasizes her inner state where everything around her feels like this giant nebulous weight that is constantly pressing down on her, always on the verge of crushing her completely. It is a tense and stressful movie, but also one that feels strangely affirming. You know, I think with problems like these, it's just so important to know that you're not alone, that this isn't just happening to you, and I felt like this movie really offers that sort of solidarity and understanding. Up next is Sorry Baby, which is the debut feature film from Ava Victor, who wrote, directed, and also stars in this story about Agnes, a university professor who is still haunted by a bad thing that happened to her a couple of years ago when she was still a student at that same university. And because of this, she now feels somewhat stuck in life.
Did you bring a cat into the grocery store?
No.
She is still close with her best friend, but Liddy now lives in New York. She's expecting a baby and seems to have a lot of other stuff going on, which only emphasizes the extent to which Agnes is kind of frozen in amber. As we cut back and forth between multiple years of their lives, Sorry Baby offers a beautiful portrait of how a traumatic experience can lock you in place and keep you there while everything and everyone around you seems to move on. More generally, it's a poignant reminder of the randomness of bad things happening to a person. How sometimes that's just how life is, and that it's not yours to control, and it certainly isn't your fault.
But sometimes bad stuff just happens.
And inversely, the movie also does a great job of emphasizing the strange and unexpected places we end up finding solace and relief.
I got a cat. Whatever you need.
There's one scene in particular where Agnes is comforted by a random sandwich vendor, which is just really heartwarming, and which also demonstrates Victor's strong command over tone here, as she seamlessly blends comedy with drama to share what feels like a deeply personal story.
And even though that old world is gone now, even though it's been rolled up like a scroll and put somewhere, you can still feel the echo of it.
Another movie that really moved me this year was Train Dreams, which recounts the life of Robert Grenier, a logger and railroad worker who experienced love, loss, violence, and beauty while quietly witnessing the rapid changing of America around the turn of the 20th century.
Sometimes it feels like it happened to somebody else.
I've seen this being compared to the work of Terrence Malick, and while I see the connection, I also feel there are some important differences, mainly in the perspective from which the story is presented. Whereas Malick likes to put us directly in the minds and existential musings of his characters, Train Dreams maintains a certain distance. It's distinctively looking back at the life of someone who by now is long gone, and whose exact inner thoughts and feelings we can now only guess at. In this sense, you're not so much identifying yourself with the main character as much as you are witnessing him. And I think there's an emotional power in that too. It reminded me of a quote from Cormac McCarthy's The Crossing, which said that the lesson of a life can never be its own. Only the witness has power to take its measure. And indeed, the characters in Train Dreams are often explicitly questioning their place in the grand scheme of things.
This world is intricately stitched together, boys. Every thread we pull, we know not how it affects the design of things.
And while this can make it feel like the movie is a bit too didactic, it's not always very subtle about its philosophizing, I do think that in the end it is still up to the audience, who is given this greater vantage point, capable of seeing the entirety of Robert's life in a way that he never really could, to find the meaning in it. Or at the very least, to get a more palpable sense of the greater machinations of time and history that so indifferently and so inexplicably moved past the life of this poor man, and that will someday pass us as well.
Just waiting to see what we've been left here for.
2025 was also the year that I went to the Cannes Film Festival for the first time, which was just the best experience. I had a great time exploring the city, connecting with my fellow film critics, and of course, getting to see a whole bunch of fascinating new movies. Sarat, for example, was an absolute highlight and one to look out for. But if I'm limiting myself to the ones that have since had a public release and that I've been able to see a second time, there are two of them of which I can now say they're definitely among the best of the year. The first is Joachim Trier's Sentimental Value.
It really struck me today. I don't know if I'd ever really seen a film like it before.
This really is one of those movies that feels at once grand and intimate. A movie that, by the end of it, has you fully convinced that this is a real family with a real house and a real history. And I loved every little bit of it. Presentation-wise, it's just such a fascinating mosaic of different styles and techniques that all come together beautifully to articulate the story of a filmmaker who tries to reconnect to his daughters, in part by making a movie about their life that he wants one of them, who works as a theater actress, to star in.
I can't work with him. We can't really talk.
What unfolds is a complex yet energetic and often quite funny exploration of how family dynamics evolve over time, and the way it intersects with ego, with past grievances, regrets, desires, and with art, which, like any other form of self-expression between humans, functions here as a force that can both disconnect and bring people together.
Hi, Papa.
The other movie from the Cannes Film Festival that I also still really enjoyed when I saw it again a few months later was Splitsville.
Desire and Carrie.
I feel like this is the exact type of comedy movie that we've been so sorely missing these past few years. One that is funny and clever both on a moment-to-moment level, where it's just filled with so many little jokes, and with some of the best visual comedy I've seen in I don't even know how long.
Shit! The fish! Pick him up! Pick him up!
And one that also works really well on its larger structural level, with an engaging story that is constantly subverting its own status quo, and with great characters who feel like actual people while still having heightened personalities that propel them into all kinds of absurd interactions.
You guys are so inspiring. I hope I'm this mature when I'm your age.
Thanks, Jackson.
We're not that old. Go to bed.
Splitsville is a story about friendship and relationships, and about all the strange and conflicting subconscious fears and desires that can get in the way of them. Again, it feels like we're just not getting many comedies like this one anymore, which is a shame because when done well, as this one is, they're just such a delight.
Okay, well, guess we're going out for dinner.
Before we leave the Cannes corner, I have one more honorable mention, which is It Was Just an Accident. This was the winner of the Palme d'Or, the big prize at the Cannes Film Festival, but I unfortunately missed it at the festival itself and didn't get to see it until its public release later this year. But even so, I thought it was really good. It's about a man who, years after being imprisoned and tortured by the Iranian authorities, believes he has found his former captor and kidnaps him. But because he isn't quite sure of the man's identity, he seeks out some people who were imprisoned with him to ensure they've got the right guy. It starts off as kind of a dark comedy, but it's also unmistakably a highly political movie about Iran's oppressive regime. One that becomes especially incisive towards the end, with a conclusion that will definitely stick with you for some time. Though I was lucky to catch It Was Just an Accident just in time before the end of the year, unfortunately I cannot say the same about every 2025 movie, as there are a few promising looking ones that I just haven't been able to see yet. Marty Supreme, for example, doesn't release here until February, but from what I've heard it's really good, and Timothée Chalamet supposedly delivers a career-defining performance. Same goes for Chloe Zhao's Hamnet, which comes out in late January here and which I'm excited to see based on the early reactions. I'm also very much looking forward to The Testament of Anne Lee by Mona Fastfold, whose previous film The World to Come I really enjoyed. And then of course there's Avatar Fire and Ash, which I'm carefully optimistic about. I know this series is not like the epitome of great storytelling, but the world is just so beautifully made and so immersive that I'm still excited to jump back in and see what James Cameron has in store for us. And this also brings us to the blockbuster front, to the bigger, more action-packed movies that I saw this year. A few more honorable mentions here. For starters, I really liked 28 Years Later. I think Danny Boyle is just such a creative director, and this return to his sort of zombie franchise was much more exciting and much more moving than I thought it would be. I just love the world building here, and I'm very curious how the story is going to continue in the upcoming sequel. I was also surprised by Predator Badlands, which I think did a remarkable job at connecting you to its alien protagonist, and which is just a solid B-movie that knows exactly what it is and delivers on that promise. But for me, the defining blockbuster of 2025 still is Ryan Coogler's Sinners.
You keep dancing with the devil. One day it's gonna follow you home.
This movie is just a blast from start to finish, and somewhat paradoxically I think it actually achieves that not by being filled to the brim with action, but rather by actually spending a lot of time to build out the world and its characters, and to actually make us care about them before sending great danger their way. Much has already been said about the landmark sequence of Sammy's time-bending musical performance, and about its dark inversion of the vampiric force that seeks its own form of transcendence. And rightfully so, because I think these contrasting depictions of artistic engagement very much capture the essence of the movie's central conflict. As I see it, besides being a genuinely entertaining rollercoaster ride, Sinners is also a meaningful reflection of the eternal tension between creation and consumption, between the forces of good that constructively engage in art and culture as an ongoing and ever-evolving process of collective self-expression.
This gift can bring healing to their communities.
And the forces of evil that seek to disrupt this natural flow by imposing their own homogeneous vision of it, which might have its tempting qualities, but which will ultimately leave you isolated and disconnected from a world that will just end up moving on without you.
This is the way. Together. Forever.
I also have one more double feature for you, two war movies that I think complement each other in a fascinating way.
Alright, do it.
The first is Warfare, which retells the true story of a mission gone wrong during the Iraq War. And the second is the documentary 2000 Meters to Andrivvka, which is about a Ukrainian platoon's effort to reclaim a village from the Russians. I wasn't sure which of them I'd label as the honorable mention and which as the favorite, which is how this list came to have 11 favorite movies instead of 10.
Yeah, guys, my shit is still in there.
What I loved about Warfare in particular was how it offered an almost purely sensory experience of combat. One that really captures the subjectivity of humanity at war, and that demonstrates its devastating impact on our psyche in the most immediate sense.
Yeah, that fucking Claymore rocked me, dude. Fucking rung my bell.
Like, it doesn't take much for these men to have their cages completely rattled. And it's this disoriented panic that reverberates throughout the entire movie, adding a certain nightmarish and disillusioning quality to it that I thought offered a unique perspective on the nature of war. On the other hand, 2000 Meters to Andrivvka is harrowing through the sheer power of reality. A lot of footage comes directly from the helmet cameras of soldiers on the front line, and the resulting images are just astonishing. They really bring you as close to war as you'd ever want to get, and immediately dispel any romanticized notions you might have about it.
They said it was the 56th funeral here.
What both of these movies communicate very effectively is that, in its essence, war is a state of failure, ruining the lives of those involved and often destroying exactly that which we seek to preserve. Warfare depicts this from the point of view of the aggressor, as the American soldiers are wreaking pointless havoc in a country where they do not belong, which is ultimately emphasized by the sheer meaninglessness of the whole ordeal. And 2000 Meters to Andrivvka shows the arguably more tragic perspective from a people defending themselves against a foreign invader, slowly losing their young men to the slaughter, and desperately trying to save what little they have left in an all-devouring war that, as they worry towards the end while standing in the ruins of the titular village that will soon be recaptured by the Russians, might go on for the rest of their lives.
This war is a nightmare none of us can wake up from.
Last but certainly not least, there is probably the one 2025 movie of which I already feel fairly confident that it's going to be regarded as a future classic. I'm talking, of course, about Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another.
Cool out. Ocean waves. Ocean waves. Let's go.
This movie is honestly so good that I don't even know where to begin. I've seen it twice now and I was just totally immersed each time. I think I actually enjoyed it even more on a second viewing because besides just being caught up in each present moment, I was now also anticipating with excitement the next great sequence that was always just around the corner. From the tragic downfall of the French 75 in the extended prologue and the exhilarating battle of Bac-10 Cross to the already iconic car chase and finale. It's a testament to the sheer command of the storytelling quality and filmmaking craft that PTA put into this. Every frame is a painting, every scene is a symphony, and the subject feels both extremely timely while also capturing deeper eternal questions about how to engage power within a society.
We've been laid siege for hundreds of years. You did nothing wrong. Don't get selfish.
One Battle After Another shows the tension between a life for the greater good versus a life for oneself. And, probably most importantly, it explores how we come to terms with our legacy as parents, as the older generation that's on the verge of handing the world down to the next. Do we live in fear and despair because we weren't able to win the fight that once seemed so monumental and decisive? Or is the idea that we can save the world in our time just its own form of hubris? One that only ends up disconnecting us from the broader forces of history in which the goal wasn't necessarily to win the fight, but rather to keep it alive.
Maybe you will be the one who puts the world right.
PTA doesn't offer clear and easy answers, but rather uses these complicated questions as vehicles that shape the lives of his characters. And in doing so, he reflects on how they affect all of us in some way or another. how they cause us to behave, to believe, and how they drive us to engage the world that we are, in the end, inevitably a part of.
Be careful.
I won't.
And that concludes another year at the movies. I know we're not quite at the end of 2025 yet, but I always like to get this video out a little bit earlier so that I can spend the holidays with friends and family. And I hope you're able to do the same. And just in case you're still looking for the perfect holiday present or just want to treat yourself with something nice, let me give you one more recommendation. So you may have noticed this cool new addition to my studio, which is actually a metal poster from Displate. I have a couple of others here too. I have these ones from Jurassic Park, which I thought were really cool. But this is the one that I was really after. For many years now, I've wanted a proper map of Middle Earth, and now I finally have one. I'm not sure how well this translates on camera, but the amount of detail here is just astounding. Like, it feels like real paper, and this is just the matte version. You can also get something called Textra, which means that the poster has an actual 3D texture, which is great if you want a truly haptic image, if you know what I mean. Displate offers a wide variety of premium metal posters with prints from official brands, independent artists, and even from classical painters. People have often asked me about this painting behind me, which is The Return of the Herd by Dutch painter Pieter Bruegel, who's one of my absolute favorites. Now, this is actually a cloth with padding behind it to soundproof the room, but the print is also available on Displate, along with many of Bruegel's other beautiful works, which I'd recommend getting in a bigger size as they're just so full of immersive details. Of course, there are many other great paintings too, and iconic photographs, artworks, and movie posters. And if for some reason that's not enough, you can also make a custom poster with an image or photo of your own. What I particularly love about Displate is how easy it is to install them. I hate drilling holes in my walls, and with the metal posters from Displate, I don't have to because of their magnetic mounting system. You just stick the protective leaf on the wall, place the magnet on it, and that's it. And if you want to change things up, you can just pull it down and hang another in its place. Of course, I wouldn't be telling you all this if I didn't also have a great discount for you. Because if you use my personal link, you can get up to 40% off on your next order of premium metal posters. Displate also offers speedy delivery, so if you're still looking for that perfect holiday gift, Displate has got you covered. So again, be sure to use my personal link to claim your discount and to make your home or someone else's a little bit more beautiful this holiday season. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas, a happy new year, and I'll see you all again in 2026.